Greetings, Facebook Live. Welcome to WKYC's 3-Point Play. I am Ben Axelrod. This is Matt Florjancic. A lot going on in the Cleveland sports world today. We're going to start with the Cleveland Browns. The NFL annual meetings are underway in Orlando. A lot of news coming out of there. But maybe the biggest news actually coming out of Bristol with ESPN's Chris Mortensen reporting that the Browns have narrowed their choice with the number one pick down to Sam Darnold and Josh Allen. Not necessarily a surprise when you consider the contingents that the Browns sent to Wyoming and USC last week for their pro day, but interesting nonetheless. I think Hugh Jackson pretty much said at those owner meetings that they're going to go quarterback at one. Obviously, that's not a surprise, but it looks like we're getting a little closer to figuring out who that quarterback's going to be.
Yeah, and this is the time to do it. You have to figure out which way you're going to go, whether you're going to go with Darnold, who everybody considers to be the safer option, or if you're going to take the risk on the big arm quarterback. And if it's one thing we know about Hugh Jackson, he loves big armed quarterbacks. He believes in them. He thinks that they can throw through anything, and especially playing next to the big lake that we have next to First Energy Stadium, you need a guy that can cut through any kind of weather with the ball. And this is an interesting time for the franchise because they really have a lot of decisions to make. Do you go with the guy who didn't play against top-flight competition and still had 50-some completion percentage? Do you go with the guy who played against top-flight competition and couldn't hold on to the football? There's a lot of things that you have to weigh, and regardless from a personality standpoint, I think they're going to get a good young man with either pick. It's just what they want out of their quarterback position. Yeah,
and you look at the route they have gone not only with Tyrod Taylor but Drew Stanton. They do not want – whoever they pick, and Hugh Jackson lent his voice to this today when speaking with reporters. Whoever they pick, they do not want that guy to play. And to me, that almost eliminates Baker Mayfield. As a 23-year-old quarterback, that's almost too long for him to sit to be 24 or 25 by the time he's starting again. And Josh Rosen, I think he's a little more polished than both Sam Darnold and Josh Allen. I think the route they have gone, though, especially with the Drew Stanton signing, because it's what they obviously wanted Tyrod Taylor because they wanted to try to win games and put a increased emphasis on winning games this season. But when you talk about adding Drew Stanton now and ensuring that that rookie quarterback doesn't have to play, to me that just points even more toward a guy like Sam Darnold or even especially a Josh Allen.
Yeah, the mission going into the offseason was to build up the quarterback room to where your rookie did not have to play. Last year, the Browns were forced into the situation by their own doing. They decided to let go of Brock Osweiler, terminate his contract right before the end of the preseason, and they went extremely young. And they saw what young looked like, and it wasn't very good.
Yeah.
So now they're going the exact opposite route with a new regime in place. They're trying to win now, but also keep the rookie at bay for at least a year. And with that Stanton signing, you're wondering maybe it could be two. You could be in a situation to franchise Taylor if he has a good year this year, so you then solidify the quarterback position for 2019 as well before you go into the, okay, this is going to be Allen's team, this is going to be Darnold's team or Rosen's team or whatever, what have you. It's a very interesting scenario right now, and I'm interested to see how it plays out as the weeks go on, but you've got to watch out for reports at this point of the year because smoke screens are abound. Like, if suddenly people start talking about the Browns being interested in Josh Rosen and Baker Mayfield, don't pay any attention to that. It could just be their way of trying to get more out of the number 4 pick if they desire to trade it.
Yeah, you look at – I think this was always sort of trending towards Sam Darnold. He's been the name linked to the Browns all along. Josh Allen, I do think, because of his skill set, because of what he brings to the table and why a coach like Hugh Jackson would be infatuated with him. I think there was always going to be that period where his name was going to be linked to the Browns as well. But this wasn't surprising. I mean, Mayfield and Rosen, those are the two names that haven't been linked to the Browns really by any substantiated reports or quotes or anything like that to this point. Looking at our comments, though, here on Facebook, we put out who do you want them to pick. A lot of Saquon Barkley fans still out there. Like, I know we get kind of in this bubble of NFL draft talk and stuff, but to the general public and who they want the Browns to select, Saquon Barkley's name is still very much out there. I see Jimmy here saying Saquon Barkley no matter what. Brian Allen saying Saquon. Curtis Harris saying Allen. If not Allen, Barkley. I say stay away from Darnold. The interesting thing about this, though, is you look at the New York Giants selecting second, the New York Jets now selecting third after that trade. It looks like there's a very good chance that Saquon Barkley is going to be there at 4 if that's who the Browns want.
Yeah, I've said it for weeks now that Barkley's going to be available at 4, and then when the Jets traded up to 3, it became pretty much a done deal that Barkley will be there at 4 if the Browns choose to take him, if they go corner, if they go safety, if they trade out of the pick. They're going to have the opportunity to not only get their quarterback, but also the best player in the 2018 NFL Draft by many people's projections. They will have the opportunity to really get a dynamic duo in that backfield if they play their cards right.
Yep. Karen here saying Allen all the way, and then John says Josh Rosen is aces. You wrote something about Josh Rosen today that was a little interesting. It was actually about Sam Darnold,
right?
But his former college coach, Jim Mora Jr. at UCLA, formerly of UCLA, he was asked what he thought the Browns should do with the number 1 pick, and he did not.
He didn't mince words.
Yeah. Why don't you share what he said?
No, he did not mince words at all. He said based off of fit, Sam Darnold would be the best selection for the Cleveland Browns. He said, I love Josh Rosen. I think Josh is going to be a great player, but based off of fit, Darnold's the perfect guy for Cleveland. He's a gritty, blue-collar, hard-working guy versus Rosen, who's kind of viewed as the chosen one, the guy who chose football as a backup when he decided not to play tennis anymore. It's an interesting take. It's not something you expected to see coming out of UCLA or somebody who was associated with the program and Josh Rosen at some point in their career, but it was an honest assessment of what he believes about the quarterback position in this draft. He did go on to say, though, that he expects both of them to have good pro careers, and that hopefully in a decade they're having the who's better Tom Brady, Peyton Manning discussion. That's high praise, and that's a heck of a lofty goal, but it was interesting how he felt that fit-wise, Rosen wasn't as good for the Browns as Darnold.
Do you buy into that fit matters in terms of personality with meshing with the city?
Sometimes I do, especially from a quarterback perspective. Look, if he plays any other position, no, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Maybe you could argue that a wide receiver could be because they have their diva tendencies sometimes. But with quarterback, I think it does matter.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I think it really does impact how a city views their quarterback. You look at the guys who have been successful around the league. Peyton Manning was the chosen one. Goes to Indianapolis and reinvents Colts football. Was probably the most successful quarterback they had other than Johnny Unitas. So that was a good fit, though, because he was a blue-collar kid. Even though he was the guy that had so many lofty expectations, he was the guy that worked his tail off to get better.
Yeah.
Tom Brady, much the same way. Boston is a very blue-collar, hard-working town. And you get a 6th-round pick that worked his way up the depth chart and took advantage of every opportunity that he got and blossomed into this huge star. Personality does matter at the quarterback position, especially if you're going to have a laissez-faire attitude. That's not going to fly in a town like Cleveland. That's not going to fly in a town like Pittsburgh, Detroit, like the Steel Belt or the Rust Belt. It's not going to work.
But it won't necessarily work in New York either. I mean, those are that's the biggest media market in the world.
It won't work for true football fans in New York.
Yeah.
But the media will love whoever that person is. If it's Rosen, if Rosen goes 2 to the Giants and Mayfield goes 3 to the Jets, which I think will happen, New York reporters will lose their ever-loving minds.
Right.
They are going to have a wealth of off-the-field stories that they will be writing from the time that they get drafted to the time they no longer wear the uniform.
Right. I do think it's interesting that for as talented as Josh Rosen is, I mean, I think he throws the prettiest ball at this point.
I know.
He has not been tied to the Browns. He really hasn't been. I mean, the Giants, there was a little bit of a flirtation there, it seemed like, but he it almost seems like in the mock drafts he's falling just as often as he's going 2, 3, or 4.
Right. No, there's no question about it. It's weird because he is physically the most ready talent of the quarterbacks, and yet he's the guy that everybody's like, nah.
Right.
You know, we kind of like, well, we'll take him if we get him, but we'd rather have somebody else.
Yeah, it seems like
bizarre.
they're finding more reasons to like even guys like Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen who aren't as polished as a Josh Rosen.
You're overthinking the process by talking yourself out of Josh Rosen.
Yeah.
Look, we all know that he comes from a very wealthy background and he grew up playing tennis more than he did football. Bottom line is he's still a pretty damn good football player.
Yeah.
And if you pass up on him because you don't think he's the right mental fit or personality-wise, look, plenty of quarterbacks have terrible personalities and are still able to find successes.
Yep.
You know, you look at some of the most successful quarterbacks in the NFL, they're not going to win Mr. Congeniality in the locker rooms. Peyton Manning was a very demanding quarterback. Tom Brady is a very demanding quarterback. The best have to be that way. And if Rosen is able to have that mentality, that mindset, you're going to get a really good player, and you're going to get a guy with a chip on his shoulder and something to prove.
Yeah.
So I think whoever gets Josh Rosen, if he does end up falling, is going to get a really, really good quarterback who's going to start a heck of a lot sooner than Sam Darnold or Josh Allen.
Yeah, let's shift gears to the Cleveland Cavaliers, our third topic. They take on the Miami Heat tonight, riding a 5-game winning streak. I've been calling it a 4-game winning streak, but I guess I don't count wins over the Chicago Bulls at this point as
You should.
regular.
That was a hard fought
Yeah,
one.
that was, and that kind of jump-started this whole thing. But it's a 5-game winning streak riding in to Miami, which sometimes, especially with a day off yesterday, might be a scheduled loss. But the Cavs' first reunion with Dwayne Wade since trading him back to the Miami Heat at the NBA trade deadline. I wrote about something on WKYC.com today about how this could actually be a playoff preview. Right now it's not. The Cavs have the 3 seed and the Heat have the 8 seed. But there's only a few games separating a potential 3-6 matchup, a potential 4-5 matchup. Even in the second round, if the Heat were to get the 7 seed and knock off Boston, then they could meet if the Cavs are a 4 or 5 seed. But it's way too early. There's still a lot of games to go in terms of shaking out playoff seedings. But that's the one thing we've never seen. For all the games LeBron James and Dwayne Wade have played in the playoffs, whether it's on the same team or different teams, they've never played against each other in the playoffs.
It would be unique to see it, but I would have rather seen it 5 years ago when they were in their prime.
I would have rather seen it 3 years ago when LeBron had first come back to Cleveland.
Yeah, that would have been ideal, but it seems like right now with the way Dwayne and Miami are going that I'm not exactly sure you're going to get the best out of them. And maybe that's a good thing for the Cavs that they won't get as start of a test. But LeBron, since coming back to Cleveland, Miami has been a house of horrors for the Cavs.
Yeah.
They do not play well in South Beach.
No.
And to get locked into a potential 7-game series with them, I think they would be fine and they would get through it, but it would look a lot uglier than it necessarily should or would on paper you would expect it to.
No, I think that Miami's actually a tough playoff team. They're very deep. Dwayne Wade, obviously, he's not anywhere near his prime, as we saw here in Cleveland, but he is a guy who lives for those moments, lives for those playoff series, and I think he's actually very valuable to the Heat. LeBron was asked about Dwayne and you know, him being traded to Miami, and I thought LeBron said something interesting. He said it feels like years ago that Dwayne Wade was on the Cleveland Cavaliers, that the Cavs have really played 5 different seasons. And I think he was exaggerating, but you go back and look.
He's not wrong.
The start of the season when they were struggling and Dwayne was in the starting lineup, when they hit their stride and went on that 18-1 run around December, the struggles with Isaiah Thomas, the trade deadline, and now all the injuries they've dealt with. It might actually be like closer to 6 or 7 seasons by the time they even get to the playoffs, which is a whole nother season in and of itself.
There's been so many scenarios for this team, and I wrote a complimentary piece to yours about the Cavs just finding ways to win recently while still going through adverse conditions and circumstances. It's been impressive, it's been unprecedented, and it's been mildly bizarre because you look and you're like, you don't want to ever ask the question, but you're almost like, what else can go against this team right now and them still find a way to win. It has been a tale of 5 or 6 or however many seasons. You break it apart and just how everything went. It's been so bizarre, but yet interesting at the same time to see this team is still a top 3 team in the East. And had they not gone completely off the rails between Christmas and the trade deadline, they would be a 2 seed.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Go ahead.
Well, you guys were talking earlier about the Miami Heat. Cavs have lost 13 straight in Miami.
Yeah, and that dates back to, I would imagine, LeBron's time in Miami. So they haven't won a game there.
They have not won a game in Miami since LeBron's last season here before he left.
So 2000.
I know LeBron has sat out some of those games when they.
He sat out a lot of those games. Actually.
So, but yeah, I mean Miami has absolutely been a house of horrors. It's going to be interesting to see, especially with this being a potential playoff matchup. But South Beach has a way of getting to a lot of teams on road trips. Yeah,
just like Toronto.
Chalk that one up to nightlife. But we'll be keeping an eye on tonight's Cavs game, and we'll have you covered on WKYC.com tomorrow on all the latest. We'll be breaking it down on tomorrow's WKYC 3-point play. That's going to do it for today's episode, though. He's Matt Florjancic. I'm Ben Axelrod. Thanks for watching on Facebook Live.